In my personal life, I have never once met people to whom I could speak my mind freely without causing upset or reaping anger. Safe to say, I don't really like people anymore. So of course I'm very happy to have so many people on my TikTok account, almost 38,000 people now, who do seem to appreciate what I have to say. And this has been an eye-opener to me, because if you would ask me this 4 years ago, if there were going to be ever that many people who cared to listen to what I had to say, I wouldn't have believed it. So 4 years ago, I started speaking, practicing my speeches and so on, first for YouTube videos, and then I switched to TikTok because TikTok gave me a far broader reach. My videos started going viral sometimes, right? So this was a very, very exciting, new endeavor. If there's been any time in my life when I had friends, it's because I was being nice to them. I was giving them, hoping to get friendship back. But that's not how the world works. You just end up getting screwed. I've had a terribly traumatizing childhood, involving me as a teenager surviving several suicide attempts, and then being left in a society that couldn't care less, like literally no one cared. And in my personal life, I've never met anybody I could talk to about this. No one cares. I then went to university thinking this is what I was supposed to be doing in life, because my father went to university, his father went to university, so that's how it works, right? That's how it works in the Netherlands. I also didn't really care about my studies at all. And after graduating, I ended up working in IT for a couple of years while living in Munich, Germany, because I had ended up there for an internship, which I also didn't really care about. The internship just taught me that I would never ever want to work for a corporation ever again. Despite having a lot of social connections to hang out with on the weekends in Munich, I had a large group of people that I knew well, but they weren't really my friends in the end, and I felt terribly lonely there in Munich, so I decided to move back to the Netherlands, and eventually I ended up in Amsterdam. I spent a few years working in IT in Amsterdam, and I didn't know it at the time, but Amsterdam, according to Professor Eddie Brommelman, happens to be the #1 narcissistic clusterfuck in the world. Indeed, more people suffer from narcissistic personality disorder in the Amsterdam area than anywhere else in the world. So you don't want to end up there. And I ended up there. I did my best trying to socialize in Amsterdam, but it wasn't going to work out for me. There were several things going really wrong in my life. Because I was self-employed, working for my own IT company, in the Netherlands, that means you're never going to get a mortgage. You're going to have to buy a house in cash. That meant, for me, I could see that I was going to be condemned to paying rent for the rest of my life anyway. I was never going to be able to own a house in the Netherlands. And on top of that, the harsh, unfriendly climate in Amsterdam and the previous deception and disappointment that I suffered in Munich, I also concluded that I was never going to find the love that I really wanted. I was working my ass off, making 100K or more a year, right? But I was not getting anything out of life that I wanted. I just wanted to be loved and have some real friends to speak my mind to. And if these things were not available to me, I didn't see any more point in working for society just to pay taxes. So I sold all my belongings at some point, and I bought a backpack with some gear so I could travel, not the world, but Europe. I wanted to see my continent and see our people living here in Europe. So I went via Berlin to southern Italy, Bari, crossed to Greece, spent some time there, and then crawled my way up, snaked my way up through Albania, Romania, Bulgaria, and so on. I got to Ukraine as well, and also Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, Sweden, Denmark. I went to Iceland eventually. I came back. I went to Austria and Hungary, and then I spent some time living in Hungary, in Budapest. The initial 6 months of travel were literally the best time of my life. I met so many kind, nice people. Turns out the sort of people who go traveling to find themselves are really nice people. They're easily to befriend. You immediately have some kind of connection. Like, I had friendships that I had never had before. But I went back to work, still foolishly thinking that that's what I was supposed to do in life, right? So I tried to pick up my IT profession again. And after some years in Budapest, I eventually left and returned to the Netherlands again. But then COVID happened in 2019. And I decided to cut loose from society again. This time I had a car and I drove my car around Europe, again, first to Hungary and then all the way back to Sweden. And I spent maybe about a year in total or so traveling around Sweden. just to experience the sense of freedom that mobility offers. During these travels now, I spend a lot of time doing all the inner work to process my traumatic childhood, the traumas that I had never really processed because I didn't really know or understand what was going on. And although I had been collecting my thoughts about what went wrong in my life since around age 21, 22, 23, right? So until age 39, I'm 43 years old now. So I spent almost 20 years of my life trying to process the pain I had suffered, right? And I was able to convert that into a sort of document, which I call the Who Am I document and what do I do or what do I want to do. I came up even with 500 goals, 500 things that I would still want to do in this life because I was nowhere near giving up. To me, my life was just getting started, right? And that's where I am now. In the past year, I ultimately, also with the help of the reflections I got from TikTok, being able to speak my mind for the first time in my life, on this app, a Chinese communist app that gives me more freedom of speech than any Western social media platform ever, I came to a point where I truly understand myself. For example, also in terms of the Jungian archetypes. Am I a rebel or a hero or a sage or a jester or a king? I actually know I'm not one of those. I know exactly who I am now. And because I still feel like my life has only just begun, I feel incredibly motivated to go ahead now and start doing some really important stuff. I've done all the inner work in my head. I've resolved everything, right? I confronted the past and resolved all the issues, overcame them, so to speak, and now I'm ready to take on the world. But this time, I won't have to do it alone. This time, I'm going to do it together with all my supporters. The world I grew up in didn't care about teenagers committing suicide. The world I grew up in did not care about people who had never been loved. The world I grew up in was a very harsh, narcissistic environment where everybody fends for themselves and there is no concept of society. Nobody cares about each other. Nobody helps each other out. The Netherlands is actually a very cruel place, psychologically speaking. You don't want to be there if you want to be healthy. I want to overthrow all these corrupt, selfish, egotistical governments in the West, in Europe. And I want to create a greater society based on social cohesion and love for one's own. And people who don't care about each other simply won't be a part of Europe's future. It's time to accept that the societies we've built are untenable. They cannot be maintained. And that a large number of people who always so selfishly only lived for themselves have to die out.